Hey, greetings, travelers.
Travelers.
Yes.
I don't know if that came through. We'll see.
I don't know. I heard the end of it, so that works. So,
How about
oh my gosh.
Greetings, travelers. There, it's
All
done.
right, that's better. That's better. That was more in tune with the professional podcast. So,
Oh yes, super professional.
we've only been doing this.
What? Paid the big bucks, folks. By big bucks, I mean every now and then somebody gives us a free drink somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of giving us stuff, we do owe a big round of thanks to one of our Patreon members, I guess our longest supporter, one of our biggest supporters, Jake, sent us an amazing box. We're going to be doing a video of unpacking that soon. But yes. Oh wow, I can't thank him enough.
We were completely blown away. Amazing. We're not going to say what it is because Bo didn't get a chance to unwrap it with us, so we saved her stuff. So if we give it away, it gives away for her. So we're not going to do that. But Jake, thank you a million times. You're amazing. We appreciate it. Yeah. You don't have to send us gifts. That's not what we're saying. But he did.
No, but nice when somebody does. Nice when somebody does. Yeah. And poor our guest down here is just is going what?
I think not. He's sitting there patiently waiting for you to stop rambling, Mark.
I know. But so well, we do have an amazing guest today for those who don't know him. So here he is right now. This is Daniel Reed. And Daniel, let's let the people at home know who you are and why you're awesome.
Well, I don't know that I'm awesome. I'm just me. I'm just little old me. I'm Daniel Reed. I'm the founder of the West Virginia Skeptic Society in West Virginia. And I started contributing articles to the Skeptical Inquirer a few years ago. And at this point, I've been made a member of their Speakers Bureau. And so I'm working diligently in the skeptical community to try to spread the good news of skepticism.
Wow, that sentence I never thought I'd hear uttered anywhere. Good news of skepticism. So
I love it.
I know you love it, but I, as a lot of people know, Mark's been knee deep in this for a long time, or up to his eyeballs, however you want to look at it. But as I'm newer, Daniel, for somebody who doesn't maybe know what a skeptic society is intended to do, what is the purpose of the Skeptic Society?
Well, what we do is we provide public service sorts of things in terms of speaking engagements, information, just whatever we can do to help spread scientific skepticism, ideas about critical thinking. The thing that we do not want to do is we don't want to tell people what to think. We want to talk to them about how they think. And so our group looks at different claims. We have folks who, for example, one of our members is collecting data on paranormal beliefs as it relates to any number of things, your gender, your political affiliation, and so on and so forth. Another one of our folks did a study on haunted items, allegedly haunted items, and he took a specific item and did basically a double-blind test on this, and I won't go into the details on it at present, but it was very fascinating, very interesting. And so he's going to be doing a presentation later on at a conference, Skeptic Camp, where he discusses the results, and so these are the types of things that we do. I go around myself and do presentations on what skepticism is, how people can think more skeptically, think more critically, those types of things.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of critical thinking and all this. I document. I come into it. I am a historian, folklorist. I love the folklore. I love the history, and I love delving deep behind the folklore and the legends. Now, that said, I talk to a lot of Bigfoot hunters, ghost hunters, UFO hunters, and I get their stories, and I'm documenting their stories and their encounters.
Right.
And then when I do get evidence sent to us, we send it through. We team up with a group called Parageeks, and they are there's a tech guy, there's a sound guy, and they will go through all the videos and figure out, oh, this is a peacock in a tree. That was the red eyes up in the in the tree and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's why we love. You have to look at it skeptical, but we also take the evidence, the witness evidence as it is witness evidence, is what they perceived. This is what they
Right.
saw. We're not going to discount them immediately. We want to know if we can critically think it. So that's kind of what your society does, right? I mean,
Right.
that's just
Yeah. And that's my focus is, I never wanted to dismiss anyone out of hand. I always want to listen, because my philosophy is that if you start doing that, if you have that attitude or mentality that it's all bunk, then if there is someone out there that does have some information, that does come across some evidence, we'll miss it. And so let's say, for example, I have no belief in ghosts. I have no belief in Bigfoot or any other cryptid, because for me, and it's a personal decision for me, that the evidence that's out there does not warrant belief. And so the thing that would change my mind, though, is evidence. So if someone were to present me with evidence, sufficient evidence to warrant belief in a ghost, then my mind would change. And that would be life altering for me. It would be life altering if there is a Bigfoot out there. I want to know. I'm not one of these skeptics there's a difference between a skeptic and a cynic. And there are so many people who just want to dismiss everything out of hand, without looking at it and without evaluating the evidence. And I've done investigations. I've written some articles on some investigations that I've done. I don't go into an investigation with the purpose of debunking. I don't even really like that term. As far as if someone looks at me and says, well, you're a debunker. No, I'm not a debunker. I'm an investigator. I'm a researcher. And so when I do the research and when I do the investigation, from that usually comes the debunking. That the mystery is the Scooby-Doo, the mask is pulled off, and there the mystery is solved. And the debunking to this point has come about as a result of the investigation. I let the facts speak for themselves. I don't go in with the intention of saying, oh, I'm going to prove that wrong, or I'm going to disprove that. I go in with the intention of saying, I'm going to investigate that.
Mm. Yeah.
That makes sense. I have a question. So one of the things we talk a lot about in our podcast is the term preternatural that Shirley Jackson coined, right? Which is, we don't know what it is. It's something, but we don't necessarily know what it is. Do you feel like you've ever encountered something that you don't necessarily have a very clear explanation for?
When I was young, I would say yes, because for example, but see, here's the thing. I'm looking back at my memory. I'm using with my memories, looking back at the past through the eyes of a middle-aged, a 55-year-old man, as opposed to the eyes of a 10 or 12-year-old child back then. I've got that 40 some odd years of interference, of memory interference between now and then. But for example, I have a distinct memory of walking out to our garden when I was little and looking up in the sky and seeing this object. And I remember seeing it quite clearly, and I had no idea what it was. And I thought, man, that's a UFO. And looking back at it, to me now, I'm fairly convinced I saw a blimp, because it was a couple of years ago. I was on a trip to Parkersburg, West Virginia, and on my way back, I looked up and I saw the Goodyear blimp. And I stopped and I got some video of it, and there it was flying along. And I kept thinking to myself that, maybe that's what I saw when I was young. But in my decrepit antiquity, as I am now,
You are not decrepit. Don't even start with that. You got the wrong crowd if you're going that route.
Oh, I don't know. My arthritis acts up every once in a while. The things I see now, I mean, yeah, I see things that I'll say, well, I'm not sure what that is, in terms of, like, if I see a photograph of or someone presents, but then again, I also acknowledge I don't have all the facts. I don't have all the data. I don't have all the information. And it could be something just rather prosaic that's there, but or it could be faked, or it could be, there's any number of things. I just don't have all the information. I'm not opposed to saying I don't know. I don't know is a perfectly reasonable answer to give, especially when you're dealing with anecdotes, when you're dealing with other people's information. And, people say, well, we have a video or we have pictures. And okay, so for example, the other day I had a fellow send me an email where he said, I have video of a Bigfoot, and here's what I've done. Here's the experiments I've done. I sealed food in a jar. I have it out there. And so I responded back and I said, I'd love to see it. I'd absolutely love to see it.
Yeah.
But here's my caveat. I want to see the unedited raw video that came directly from the device that you used to record it.
Yeah.
I want all the different video segments. I don't want, your YouTube version of what you're going to show. I'd love to see it. And when I ask for things like that, I usually don't get them.
Yeah.
Or if I ask for pictures with the metadata and things of that nature, I don't get them. EVPs, I've had people send me stuff, and when I listen to it, I don't hear the same thing that they're hearing, but they also try to prime me by saying it's saying X, Y, and Z. But I'll tell people, please, if you're going to send me something, don't tell me what you think it says.
The part of the reason I'm asking is obviously there are a lot of believers that listen to this show. There are some people who don't believe, and that's fine. They still listen. Thank you for listening. And I just want to define for people like what the intention of the skeptics are and why it's important, because I think you mentioned the word cynic, right? You don't want cynics. You also, on the flip side, do not want people that are so like, this is it no matter what.
Right.
You can have a belief and a surety, but I think people also need to not just be told that's not what it is, and be able to, like, Mark's example where people don't realize, like, peacocks get up on roofs and they sound like screaming, and like it's pretty there was a ton of them in Florida where we lived that had gotten out and loose, and so they were all over neighborhoods, and you go and at night it sounds terrifying. It sounds like you're going through some sort of murder scene that's occurring, but if you didn't know what they sounded like, that's what it would be. So it's one thing to go, hey, that's a peacock. They jump in trees. Let me give you some logic to fit into that slot. When you just go, that's not what you think it is, and no other information, or that can't be a Bigfoot. Well, then what is it, right? Like, what is the other piece, or what further information do you need? Because otherwise, you're discounting somebody's experience, right?
Right. And skeptics get a really bad rap, and sometimes it's deserved. Sometimes they are the people that's just poo-poos everything. People who identify as skeptics but yet they're more cynic. They're more of a cynic. A cynic is someone, and I don't mean to go down an academic track here, but that's too much. But a cynic is someone who doesn't believe in spite of the fact that the evidence is presented. They're not going to believe it. A skeptic is just someone who asks questions, who investigates, who, I mean, if you show me some evidence, I'm going to start thinking to myself, what are the alternatives? Because in science, and that's what science does, it looks at alternative explanations. It tries to rule things out. I'm a counselor by training. I used to be a therapist, and I've worked in state hospital. I've worked in community mental health. I've worked in inpatient, outpatient. I've taught psychology and sociology on the undergraduate, and counseling on the graduate level. I do come from an academic background, and the thing that I have learned is that you have to look at the evidence. You can't just simply discount someone just based upon what they're saying. Now, do we know for a fact that eyewitness testimony is the least reliable form of testimony, the least reliable form of evidence? Yes, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean something to that person. And so I don't want to be the person that's going to just say, you're just out. You're out in left field.
One of our big rules is we never say anybody's crazy. They saw something they don't understand. That's
right.
That's the rule. And now one of the things that gets me on the, I always go back to the Amazing Randy.
Yes.
Right. The magician who was all of our people with the critical thing. We want to believe, but we also, we trust but verify, right? That kind of thing. And Randy, I remember when he debunked, I forget, it was the guy who could move things with his mind. He could move paper. Yeah, Uri Geller. And he did that where they were on television. He's like, we know he's just breathing. We know he's just literally breathing to move pencils.
Oh, no. That wasn't Uri Geller. That was the other guy. I can't remember his name, but it was
Casey, but it was, I forget.
He would turn the pages in the phone book, and there's a
he could move pencils and all that. And then Randy figured out, he did the old magician's trick. He's just breathing, and blowing it out. And he's like, so we'll let you do this again, but let's just put some styrofoam on the, on the table in front of it, and you move the pencil, and we're good. And I'll give you this. What was it? $100,000 check, $1 million check?
The value of the check increased over time. It was about $10,000. I think it went from $5,000 to $10,000, and then in the end, it was $1 million.
Yeah, I remember it was $1 million, but he never had to cash it. Never had to give it away. But that was the one.
From what I understand, he also had to update it too from time to time, because when you have a check, you can't, if it's a certain date, you have to update it. So he would do that. The organization that I'm affiliated with, the Center for Inquiry, that produces the Skeptical Inquirer magazine, currently has a $500,000 challenge that they offer for someone who can, under test conditions, prove that they have some sort of paranormal ability. And the thing that they do is Jim Underdown is the fellow that's in charge of that. And what they will do is they will actually talk with the person, and they'll come up with a mutually agreed upon set of circumstances for them to test the alleged ability. So it's not like they're going to say, okay, you show us, and then we're going to, just poo-poo it. No, they come up with something in tandem with that person, and they agree upon it, and then the test is conducted. And they still haven't awarded that $500,000.
Yeah, that tells a lot. That tells a lot. No, we interview lots on here, and we get our favorite thing we get is our listener tales. And people send us these. These are encounters they've had, stories that they've had, and we read them just on the air. We don't pre-screen them. We literally just read almost every one we get. There's a few that we're like, oh, okay, this one we can't say. Got words we can't say.
Right.
But for the most part, we reread them, and we are like, hey, when we read these, we're like, hey, these are sent to us by folks. We're not judging. We're not doing anything. We're just reading the tale and letting you make up your own mind about it. And we know we've had a few that were just stories, right? People have just said, hey, let's get this story out there. We know that they slip past us, but it's not, they're not slipping past us. We're doing this, what we do. Now, what would you recommend we do as just, reading a tale without any context or anything like that? We're literally just reading somebody's encounter with something strange in their house, something on their property, something that they've experienced, without just going immediately into a follow-up and all that. How would you, as a skeptical train, what would be your first step with that?
Well, my first step, if someone were to send me that's I would preface and say, this is a story that was sent to me. I have nothing but this as it's an anecdote, and anecdotes are not evidence. And people will say, oh, it's anecdotal evidence, but it's really, it's a claim. When someone says, I have something that happened in my house, it's a claim that one has to wonder, does it follow? Can we apply science to this and look at it through the lens of science? And some people are out there, they'll say, well, science can't explain everything. No, it can't. But that's what its job is to do, is to explore and to try to come up with explanations based upon data and based upon observation. And so it's not perfect, but it's the best system that we have right now for understanding the world around us. It's the most objective system that we have for understanding the world around us. And science, they'll say, well, they talk about it like it's this thing, like it's this entity in and of itself, and it's not. Science is just a process and a way of thinking, and it's multiple disciplines. It's that umbrella term that we use to look at multiple disciplines. But there is the scientific method, and so you ask folks to start to apply the scientific method to whatever the claim is, and then you see, does it withstand scrutiny? Because that's the thing. All of these claims must withstand scrutiny, and that's, people get upset and offended if you start to analyze it. If they're presenting it as evidence, if you're making the claim, then you're the one. The onus is then upon you to be able to back that claim. If you say, I've got evidence of a ghost, okay, well, let's look at that. Let's take it, let's dissect it. Well, I don't want to dissect it. Here it is. Just accept it. No, I can't just accept it. I've got to ask questions. And they'll say, well, science doesn't want to talk about this. No, science does want to talk about it. There's plenty of studies. There were studies where people have submitted DNA and hair samples for Bigfoot. And the study came back and said, basically, we need more information and better data. It's not that we're not looking at it. It's just that it's not there. So with that, in terms of for you all, I would ask them to say, okay, when you encounter something strange, as a matter of fact, I just did a presentation last night for a group down in North Carolina on encountering the strange and what people can do when they encounter something strange. And so ask yourself, could I be mistaken? The answer to that question is always going to be yes. If you are honest with yourself, you're going to come up to the conclusion that, yes, I could be mistaken. I could have misheard something, or my eyes could have played a trick on me. You could ask yourself, is someone messing with me? Like, for example, I give this story about these two gentlemen who were out, and the one gentleman was doing owl calls. This was over in the UK, and he was doing owl calls, and he was like recording these owls and things. Well, what he didn't know was his neighbor was doing the same thing. And so when he would make this owl call, the neighbor would respond. Well, the neighbor didn't know that it was they were messing with each other inadvertently. But there's also people out there who will mess with you purposefully, who perpetrate hoaxes. So you start to have to ask yourself, is it possible? What's the most likely explanation? Is it more likely that something has transcended space and time and come across from another dimension to come into my house to rap on my window or to close a door? Or is it more likely that there's a draft, or that the door is off center and it's the something has shifted over time and it causes it to want to go? I mean, there's any number of strategies that people can apply. And I don't know if that answered your question or not, because
that was perfect. I kind of rambled on the question there anyway. So yeah, that was
well. And one thing I want to say is this: is I think it's different when somebody's coming to go, I want to prove this instance, versus this is a memory, usually attached to a little degree of trauma for them, right? Because being terrified, which a lot of these stories we get have that connotation, being scared or what is startled or feeling uncomfortable, whatever you want to call it, negative emotion. They have it, whatever happened to them in that moment, manifest in whatever form it is, because that's with them, that trauma, whatever it is that created that trauma, it's there. And a lot of times they just want somebody to tell the story to, right? Not somebody to fix it, but somebody to tell the story to, because they have not felt acknowledged or heard by other people, because it's weird and they don't have a thing. And I think that's very different than me coming to you, Daniel, and going, I think there's a fairy living in my backyard. Come prove that there's not a fairy living in my backyard. Here's the evidence I have. I want somebody to prove that that's the case, so I can go, look, I got a stamp that says Erica has a fairy living in her backyard, right? And a true skeptic came and proved that. I think that's different than the experience of communicating about it. And I don't think there's
Absolutely.
necessarily anything wrong with that, or anything wrong with that person having that reality, right? If they're not hurting other people and it's not necessarily hurting themselves. Somebody thinks they're talking to a ghost in their house, you know?
Well, I mean, I'm torn on that in terms of my wish and my desire is that everyone in the world would believe as many true things as possible and not believe in as many false things as possible. And so though I'm not going to be one, if your memory has meaning for you, and if that has some sort of emotional resonance, then I'm okay with that. And like you said, if it's not hurting anyone, but in my heart of hearts, I do wish that but that's my bias, and I recognize that I want people to look at things in terms of the facts, and I want beliefs to comport with reality. And so I understand that there's individual realities. So for example, what you experience in life is, and the way you perceive it is far different than I do. I'm colorblind, for example, and so I don't see reds very well at all. And so my wife, when we go driving in autumn, she'll look and she'll say, "Oh, look at those pretty trees over there. They're so red and and I'm looking at them going, I don't see anything. That's not So that's not my reality." And she'll say, I feel so bad for you because you can't see that. And I'm thinking, but I never have been able to see it. So I'm not missing anything because I never had it. But she sees it from a different perspective because she has had it. And so that's how I kind of look at critical thinking. And because everyone says, "Oh, I think critically." Lots of people are skeptical. Most people are skeptical about something. And so it depends upon where that line of demarcation is. So some people might say, "Well, I believe in the lizard people." And they'll go, "Well, I don't believe in the lizard people, but I believe in Bigfoot. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I believe in UFOs," or, whatever it might be. And so for me, I'd like everyone to be able to be like my wife with colors and see everything for what it is. But again, that's my bias.
That's well put.
It's well put. I mean, honestly, I don't have any depth perception. That sounds weird to people, but I was born with a defect. I have no depth perception. I drive, I do stuff, but I 100% believe what I see, the way I see things. Nobody else sees things the way I necessarily see them, right? And I'm talking literally just visual, because I have no depth perception, right? Now, that doesn't mean I can't tell, like, this monitor or this camera is a little distance from me or whatever, but would you have a more accurate description of the distance? Probably, right? And you probably go, when they say to do X, Y, Z. I think, though, that, and it's very interesting for us when we have people go, "I believe in ghosts, but I don't believe in UFOs."
Right.
And I just kind of go, okay, that's an interesting logic. Now, I had a chance to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson and sit with him and talk with him several times at the end of last year. It was a really good opportunity. And one of the things I thought was very interesting listening to him, he has, I don't know, like 45 PhDs. I don't know how many he really has, but he's got a lot, right? And science and stuff. He was sitting there talking to people, and he'd go, "Well, this is like empirically proven, right? Because it's science." And the person would be like, "Yeah, but," and it's funny because here's a scientist going, "Here's this thing that has been scientifically proven." And the person opposite of him is going, "Yeah, but this other thing." And he's like, no, it's been scientifically proven. And it just made me laugh, because you take people who are experts in the field, or like, there were astronauts there, and they were talking, who had been in space, and we're talking about what that's like and stuff. And then there are people who are like, "No, it'd be blah." And you're like, "Yeah, but you haven't been to space." Like, he was in space for a year. I think he gets to win the "what happens in space" kind of, like, sort of thing. So
And it goes back to, sorry, I want to say this before I lose it, in terms of the your depth perception. You may not be able to tell that monitor is 12 inches away from you, and I might be able to look at it and go, oh, that's 12 inches away, or it's 14 inches away. But either way, we can measure it, and we can both we can use a ruler, something that is objective, to make that determination precisely, and it's something that we can both agree on. I mean, we can both look at it and say that's 12 inches away based upon this metric. And so the problem that I have, I think, with folks is not, it's not a problem. I shouldn't say it's not. I don't ever want to be cast aspersions or anything. Is when they see it and they'll still say, nah, that's not 12 inches. That's what that says. And I'll use that to measure, my carpet tiles over here, but I don't believe that that's 12 inches. So it goes back to what you're saying in terms of the fact that these people can look at these data that are out there, and they will still dispute it. And that's when they are the cynics, disputing something, not believing in light of evidence.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Okay, we have to take a break. I know we're a little over.
We can't dispute that we need to take a break. So that's so we will be right back after this.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travels producer Bo Lake. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold, or at linktree.com/Bo__Lake.
And we're back. Oh my gosh.
We're back. And this has been fascinating. So I have to ask you, Daniel, what made you go down this path? What made you go, I am going to go down the path of being a skeptic and get myself educated in it and become a member of this thing? Like, what made you even decide to do that?
Well, it goes back to, and I'm going to do just a little bit of shameless plugging of myself here. I do have an article.
Please do.
For anyone who wants the extended version of this, I have an article in the Skeptical Inquirer on the website, in the Skeptical Inquirer magazine, the website component of it, that does go into my origin story, so to speak. So I will give you the truncated version, but basically, I grew up watching all these really cool TV shows. Like, for example, Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And, I would see these other shows on television that happened usually once a year, because where I grew up, we had 3 channels, and once a year they would put something on, like, something about Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and UFOs and stuff. Well, anyway, so it really truly goes back to the Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, all of that stuff, because I was looking through a catalog, the Christmas catalog, when I was little, and I saw this magic kit that was in there, and I was like, aha, a magic kit. This is cool, because I didn't understand at that point in time that magic wasn't magic. It was that they were tricks. And so it talked about, in the description of the catalog of the kit, it had a magic wand, and it talked about these things that you could do with the magic wand. You could make things levitate. You could do this. You could do that. And I'm thinking, hot dog, I'm going to be like the folks on Bewitched. I'm going to be able to just twiddle my little wand, and I'm going to be able to disappear. I'm going to be able to make things float. I'm going to be able to change the weather. I'm going to do all this cool stuff. And so there it was. I got the kit as a present. I opened it up. I pulled out that magic wand, And I looked at the other stuff that was in there, and I was like, what is this? And I pull out the wand, and the wand's plastic. And I'm going, huh. So, okay, how do I use this thing? And so, because I was still fully expecting to be able to, just disappear, or to make a goat appear out of nowhere, or, whatever it might be. Or so I start to look through the little instruction booklet, and I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And so the best way I can describe the way I felt was sort of like Lucy on, not Lucy, on Charlie Brown, Sally on Charlie Brown, when she realized that the great pumpkin wasn't coming. I've been robbed. And so then I started to wonder. So from a very young age, I started to wonder about these sorts of things. Now, I'm also going to preface this by saying that I have delved into and studied all different types of things of the occult. I used to do tarot card readings. I used to be into astrology. I did look at real magic, air quotes, real magic. I looked in all these different things over the years, and I put a good deal of effort into studying them. And inevitably, the conclusion that I always came to was that there was no substance there for me. They didn't do the things that I was of the belief that they would when I started looking into them. So I've studied all manner of stuff, all kinds of weird and strange and wonderful things. But I've always come to the conclusion at the end of it that, wait a minute, this didn't fulfill the criteria of it actually having enough evidence to support continuing warranting a belief. And so from that, I had always practiced stage magic, like prestidigitation and those sorts of things. I was a magician for a number of years, and through college, I did mentalism acts. I did hypnosis acts. Stage hypnosis. For those people who are not familiar with stage hypnosis, there's actually techniques to it. It's all fun and games, but at any rate, I've done things that I was involved in the martial arts. Where we break. I used to be able to. I can't do it anymore. I'd hurt myself anymore. Be able to break blocks, and the things with the breathing exercises and all these different things. Everything that had anything to do or could possibly have some sort of a mystical or magical sort of perspective to it, I tried to study and dissect, with the intent of not debunking, but investigating it and seeing, not from a scientific perspective, because I was trying to find either myself or some meaning in life or something of that nature. But I always came away from it feeling that it was lacking. And so when I was in college, a friend of mine was a magician, and he went away to medical school. He always said he went to medical school to support his magic habit, because magic is a very expensive hobby to have. It really is. But while he was at med school, he said, you can go. He said, I'm putting my stuff at my mom's. You can go look through it. You can do whatever. You can use my stuff. I've got all kinds of books. He had this wonderful magic library. And so in that, I found the Skeptical Inquirer magazines. He had a stack of Skeptical Inquirer magazines, and I started to read them. And I actually ended up just consuming as many of them as I could. And I would frequently cite them in reports that I had to do in college. So much so that my one professor got me a subscription to the Skeptical Inquirer magazine when I graduated. She gave me that as a graduation gift. She was my sociology professor. And at that time, of course, I never once thought about actually ending up writing for them and being able to contribute to them, and to be and SciCon, to be able to speak at SciCon and those sorts, never once entered my mind. But then again, as the years progressed, I was interested in magic and mentalism, and again in those pesky cryptids. I always was interested in that. And so a friend of mine, we had gone to Point Pleasant to go down to the TNT area, and it was there that I saw a blue heron sitting up in a tree, and it flew over. And that's when I wondered, I wonder if instead of, because a lot of people have attributed the Mothman to being a sandhill crane. And so I thought, I wonder what the likelihood of it being a blue heron would be as opposed to a sandhill crane. So I started to look all that stuff up and did a bunch of research. And just because I came from an academic background, I typed it all up and I did, and I just sort of tucked it away. One day I was on the internet and I came across Ben Radford's, and I'd read a bunch of his stuff before. And I thought, I wonder if there's any kind of a place that I can send this to where I might be, like a folklore conference or something like that I could maybe present this. So I reached out to him, not thinking he would ever even return my email. Actually, I wasn't even thinking about that being a possibility. And if he did, I was thinking, well, he'll just say, yeah, here's this, thanks, goodbye, that sort of thing. But no, he said to me, hey, would you be interested in sending it to me and letting me read it? I'm like, well, sure. So I sent it to him and he read, he said, would you like to submit it to the magazine? And I was like, what? And so I did. And the rest, as they say, is history. So so that's how I became a skeptic. And that's how I am where I am today. I got involved with watching Kenny Biddle's Skeptical Help Bar on his channel.
Kenny.
Yeah. And so one night, Susan Gerbic was on there as his guest, and I was in the chat hanging out. And so I basically asked, what can you do to be more involved? And so Susan piped up and she said, show up and do things and be there and show up. And so Kenny calls me after. He said, can I call you? So he called me after the show and so we talked for like 15 or 20 minutes. And from there, he and I became good friends, and here I am.
You talk about magic. I was into that too. And that's why I never progressed beyond the Hot Rod and Hiram's The Haunted Hanky, because they were the cheap ones.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Hiram, the hilariously haunted Hank. Yes. I used to do that one.
That's still my parlor trick. I always bring that out and people go, wow, that actually is cool. I'm like, yep, exactly. But no, you were talking about that, and you were talking about Kenny and magicians. And that's one of the things, I've done some of the TV shows. I've been a consultant on a few of the ghost shows. Mm-hmm. And I love pointing out that a couple of those they're most famous pieces of evidence. I'm like, I know the magician who did that trick. And that they used as their famous evidence of a psychic thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know the magician who's under an NDA and he can't talk about it, but in private he does. So that's why I always tell everybody, television is completely different from reality. And even the paranormal investigators will tell you, the ones, that are not, they're like, the TV shows are different from reality. It's it's a completely different medium.
It's entertainment. It's designed to get people to watch, so that you have advertisers, and the advertisers get people to buy the products. It's entertainment. It's not scientific research. It's not. For example, if these folks, I'm getting all excited here now. If they're finding a Bigfoot in a specific area, if they've got all this evidence for Bigfoot in this specific area, why don't they keep going back to that specific area? Instead of going, okay, well, our time's up here this week. We're going to be going next week to someplace in Ohio, and we're going to. No, if you really are wanting to do this and you're really serious about it, go to that place, stay there until you finally have the evidence that you seek.
I mean, how long did Jane Goodall sit with the ape before she got the ape? 2 years. 2 years, one spot, one mountain. And it took her 2 years to find him. That is one of the arguments for something unusual being out there we don't know, because it took her 2 years and she knew exactly where they were, and it still took 2 years to find it. And that's why she's like, hey, I'm not saying Bigfoot's not out there, because it took me 2 years to find the freaking gorillas. So.
Right. And again, I'm not saying Bigfoot's not out there. I'm saying that when people tell me, though, that it runs 30 miles an hour, it can run in short bursts for 30 miles an hour, that the average, the color of them is this, this, and this. I'm like, or that they have a gland that secretes a musky smell, because there's this other ape that does that. You don't know that. You can't make that correlation unless you actually have one to look at. I mean, if you're saying, well, we know that it's these colors because of the reports, again, I'm colorblind. You can't go by what people say they see. Eyewitness testimony is the least reliable form of evidence. And then you've got the people who speak with a surety. Well, I know what I saw and I can't be fooled. Really? Because I can show you, I can distinctly pull up illusions online and show you, you don't see what you think you see. I can show you magic tricks where I'm going to tell you, I'm going to fool you, and you're going to go into it knowing that it's a trick, but you're still not going to be able to understand you were fooled.
Penn and Teller are the masters of that.
Yes, absolutely.
They show you how stupid magic is and show you how stupid it is, and that entertains the audience, but the person experiencing the trick's like, oh my gosh, and that's even better. So
but the title of their current show is Fool Us. They want to even they who have all this catalog of magic that they've created and worked on, even they can be fooled. So to say that you can't fool me is not, that to me is, and people say, I know what I saw. Okay, I will say this, you know what you think you saw.
That's it, 100% right there.
You said something, and I know we're getting near the end here. You said something that I thought was really interesting, because, one of the things I bring up a lot was old sailors used to talk about, they called it the Kraken, these giant squids they would see, and they would down these boats and things like that. And people went, that Kraken. Yes, that's poppycock, whatever. And then now we found them. Right? They're deep in the ocean. Who knows what their behavior was back in these days when these sailors encountered them, in very different ships, because they weren't giant metal vessels. They were wooden boats that who the heck knows, right? Like how that all worked. But, for the longest time, people were, that's nuts. That never happened. And then we found them. And then we found an even bigger version of them a couple of years later, right? That has been scientifically caught at this point. And we can prove there are these giant squids, right? But it's interesting, because we talk about that all the time, is there could be stuff out there that we just haven't seen yet. People are discovering things all the time that could have a legitimate natural phenomenon. And we say paranormal, but who's to say that it's not a creature that just is a different derivative genetically from another creature that exists? You know what I mean? The whole thing with apes, monkeys, like this was, I'm bringing this up again because he said this, and I will tell you, this will probably stick with me for the rest of my life. Like, DeGrasse Tyson said, 80% of the universe is made up of carbon. That's just truth. Everything is pretty much carbon based out there for the most part. And he was like, chimpanzees have 1% DNA difference from us. 1%, right? That is tiny. It's not like 10%, 1%. But to us, the highest level that they get intelligence wise in general is a toddler, right? They're able to do toddler, maybe 5-year-old human children activities, right? They don't have speech. They don't, graduate up into being a teenager or an adult. They can't, function like we do, but it's only 1% difference, right? So he was talking about, if there are species on other planets, what is the percentage difference? And they look at us as chimpanzees, basically, right? Like that sort of thing. So if you think about that and really look at a human and look at a chimpanzee and go 1%, and then look at like how many ape species there are out there that have adapted to different life genetic growth than the tiny ones and the big ones and the silverback gorilla, you just go, okay, could something be somewhere in between these two things and have gone a different, evolutionary track? Sorry, I'm going to say evolution to anybody I offend out there that maybe doesn't believe in that, but science. And go, is there something? Because again, the giant squid 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people would be like, that, no, those never existed. That didn't happen. There's no proof.
Well,
right.
Okay, but I think in terms of science, if you look at it from science would say, we don't know. Here's some fossils that are indicative. Here's some evidence that suggests, but then when you actually have the body, when you actually see, when you have the creature itself, when it washes up on shore, or whether it's caught in a net, or whether it's captured on video, then you see that yeah, it exists. So I don't know that there are certain people out there, even in the scientific world, and scientists aren't perfect by no means. People try to speak with us with a surety and with certainty. And one thing that I know for certain is that I'm not certain about a whole lot. And the number of things that I'm not certain about continues to grow daily. And I think that's what being a skeptic is about, is acknowledging that and acknowledging the limitations of your biases, your thoughts, your opinions, and acknowledging the limitations of science, and acknowledging that, yeah, there's things out there that science does not understand yet. Dark matter, for example, we don't even know if it really exists or not, but we have some evidence that points to it. And so as a result of that, whether it's mathematical models or whether, and you're saying, well, that's a mathematical model, but a mathematical model can be used to represent this cup. You don't have to see the cup. You can have the mathematical model to describe the cup without ever having seen the cup. And that's what science does. But I think that what happens is that people get so caught up in that science is the enemy, or skeptics are the enemy, or anyone, because they are so vested in whatever it is, the thing that they believe in or that they want to exist. They're so vested in that they take any sort of questioning of that as a personal attack. And it's not. I mean, it's something to be studied, and there's a way that we go about studying it. But yeah, I agree with you that there's things out there that we don't know, like the squid that we suspected. There's stories about it, but I would also venture to say that those stories became exaggerated over time. You know, you may have seen a squid's one of the giant squid's arm go over the side of a small dinghy, or I'm not a nautical person, so I don't know what a little boat, and then that became more and more and more till it had this thing the size of a tree trunk was reaching out and wrapping around the ship, and it crushed it. And then, you know, there's all these stories that can develop, and we don't know, because it's a story, it's a claim.
It is, but the truth is, to prove anything like that, and I'm not saying it did or didn't. Again, humans were generally of smaller size. Stuff was built of smaller size. It was built out of certain things that they didn't realize may have attracted this like they could have put a wax on it that attracted the squid. Was like, what is that? That smells delicious. You know, you don't know. And that is the part that would be hard to prove, since we don't have that piece of history where exactly it happened, what happened, all that stuff. My whole thing was more that, you know, saying this thing absolutely doesn't exist when, you know, now it's been found. So you just go, okay. And, you know, there's a whole list of creatures that people said, oh, that doesn't exist. And now they found it. You know what I mean? They found the evidence of it. So,
but there's suggestion. There's evidentiary suggestions out there that they do exist. So that I mean, and so people are going to say, but there's evidentiary suggestions that Bigfoot exists. We have video. And you just said, and they could say to me, they could point at me and say, and you just said that they catch it on video, just like we caught these on video. But there's a difference. The difference is that the video that's caught by scientists, if you look at it from a legal perspective, and that's how I'm not looking at it legally, I'm just putting myself in that mindset to sort of be of an explanatory sort of tool. There's a foundation that for that evidence, and there is a chain of evidence, and that evidence is accepted because there's a triangulation of observers or of observable traits. There's specific criteria that are set into place so that when if a scientist comes out and says, or a group of scientists comes out and says, we have video of a giant squid, then the whole thing that people can look at is it replicatable? Does it stand up to scrutiny? As opposed to the videos that are caught by people in the woods, or that just happen to have a video camera, it's not replicatable. It doesn't necessarily stand up to scrutiny. And so that's the only caveat that I would say. I wanted to bring that up before we left, because I did use the video as a
okay, Daniel, it is shameless self-promotion time, my friend.
All
How
right.
do people look up you in these societies and stuff like that if they want to get into a debate with you about Bigfoot videos?
And people do.
Kidding. Yeah. Kidding.
No,
Okay.
people send me stuff, and I'm absolutely open to. I've had people from all over the world, from the UK, from Canada, send me stuff and say, hey, what do you think about this? But you can reach me. You can go to my website, www.danielareed.com. That's www.danielareed.com. And you can find me there. You can find me on the authors page of the Skeptical Inquirer magazine for Science and Reason. I'm there as part of their Speakers Bureau. If people would like for me to come and do a presentation, call, we can discuss that, or email me, we can discuss that. You can find the West Virginia Skeptic Society webpage. It's just westvirginiaskepticsociety.com. And we also have a Facebook group. And so we would love, you do not have to be a resident of the state of West Virginia to join our Facebook group. We love having all kinds of people from all different places. I try to post things on there 2 or 3 times a week, at least. Well, actually 3 or 4 times a week, that something of interest from a skeptical perspective. And like you said, if people want to send me stuff, I'm always happy to have a discussion or debate. Now, it doesn't mean we won't necessarily disagree, but I'm the type of person that we can disagree and still not be, mortal enemies. So
there you go. I agree with that.
I was hoping to be mortal enemies at the end of this. Well, I guess I'm just going to be disappointed. That's fine. Daniel, thank you so much for being on this show with us. We'll definitely have you back. I came up with a couple of different ones that I'd love to hear your theories on. So we'll have to send those to you so you can prepare and I don't just put you on the spot. But with that, thank you so much again. Mark, take us away, my friend.
Hold on, Daniel. You said you had something you like to end with earlier.
In every one of my presentations, the last slide, there's 2 final slides that I use. Number 1, skeptics are not the enemy, and number 2, stay skeptical, my friends.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Erica, I think we learned a lot today. I was very proud of this one. So, let's hope the listeners did too. And thank you all for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you do watch this on YouTube later, hit that little bell button down there. It makes all the difference in the world. And all that said, when you're out there in the wild and you see something you can't explain, document it. Try your best to get some evidence. We know sometimes these things happen quick, but try to keep a cool head. Try to get a picture. Think skeptically. And just know we'll see you on the other side.